G'day everybody, my name is Elliot Waters and you're listening to the Dysregulated podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. So today's episode is a little bit different than the rest because usually, and I've said this on the show quite a few times, usually when I'm producing a lot of podcast episodes, it's because my mood's tracking pretty well, which it has been lately, which is great. Today though is a whole different story. Today has been a terrible day and I can't really... I don't know. I hope I can get this episode out because I think it offers some great insight into what it feels like when you've got these mental illnesses doing their thing. Because, I want this podcast to be the most genuine, honest, fair dinkum, vulnerable, podcast on all the internet. And for that to be the case, I need to be showing you guys, lifting the lid when things are not going pretty good. And that's what we're at today. Now, first thing I want to say, though, is do not be concerned. So I say that because there is no reason to be concerned. This episode, this depressive episode, is within, not comfortable parameters, but recognised parameters and it's within, my boundaries. Okay? So what I mean by that is essentially I know what triggered today. And it's simple. What it is lack of sleep. So it's a very sort of fundamental sort of phenomena. Sleeping, as we know. Come on, Elliot, get the words out. So I know where this has come from, and the ones that are really scary when I've ended up in hospital are the depressing episodes where I don't know where it comes from. I don't know what the triggers are, and all of a sudden we just get flooded with this negative emotion. But make no mistake, today I have been flooded with negative emotion all day. And I've been trying to record this episode since 8 a.m. this morning. It's now 6:15. And this is the thing. See, my memory's so bad my memory's really bad at the moment in general, but see, I can't quite remember if I've already mentioned that I've been trying to do this episode since 8 this morning, or if this is the first time I've mentioned it. It's a bit hard to keep track of it because I've been doing so much talking, trying to get this episode out since this morning. It all blends into one, so I have no idea what I've said and what I need to say, and if I've missed anything, and I don't know, it'll be a miracle if this episode comes out. So if you're listening to my voice right now, let me tell you, I have had one of the great victories over my inner critic. Because that's the thing, even when things are going great guns, my inner critic is still there doing its thing, telling me I'm rubbish, and what I'm saying is rubbish and no one cares, and, what's the point? But as I'm sure you could, appreciate when I'm when I'm in these depressing sort of episodes and moods, low mood states, the inner critic is much more powerful because, we're playing on its turf, and it's got all the energy in the world and all the fuel that it needs. And that's why I never can usually, and who knows if this episode will be published, but this is why I don't have the ability to publish episodes when I am in a low mood usually. It's because the inner critic's just too bloody strong. But today I've been very determined. Obviously, if I've been trying to get this out since 8 o'clock this morning, and it's now 6:15, obviously that shows there's a bit of determination there. I think it also shows a bit of some autistic and ADHD traits as well. But anyway, whatever, we'll just work with what we've got. So, so if I repeat myself, I do apologise because my memory is not good. It hasn't been good for a while now, and it certainly isn't good today because, see, the thing is, the negative emotion, you disassociate a bit, you're not anchored to the moment. So, my attention is not focused at all. So it's very hard for me to remember things short term because my executive functioning is so poor and my cognitive functioning is as well. So not only is my memory not very good, I'm slurring words a little bit, which I don't know if you can notice, but I am stumbling across my words a little bit as well because everything's slowing down, It's not, like physically, all day I've been sort of pacing around the house, just walking slow, shuffling along. Shoulders have been rounded around, and I've been sort of crouched over and a few other things I'll mention in a minute when it's been particularly intense. But overall, I've sort of, I've gone a bit quiet. I haven't spoken to anyone else really. It's just the only time I've been speaking and been trying to do this episode. I haven't been sociable at all and haven't wanted to, really sort of going within and sort of, bunkering down and just trying to ride out this storm, because it is a storm, and it's all I can really do is ride it out, because it came on too strong and too quickly, and I set myself up to fail here, as I'll say in a minute, but unfortunately this episode, as I said, came on too quickly and it was too intense, and it's too late. Once I figured out, we're in a bad mood this morning, it was too late. That's the thing, often I wake up, I'm like, all right, how do we feel today? I don't actually know. But this morning I woke up and I knew it wasn't good. And I'll tell you why, because I'd slept about 2 hours. I reckon I had about 2 hours sleep. That's it. Because I was super anxious about an appointment that I was having this morning at the, remember that Ijmu place, the psychiatric ward that I'm meant to be going to soon. I've been super anxious about that because I'm worried they're not going to accept me, and then I really feel like I'm in big trouble then. So I've been stressing, catastrophizing about that. And then what happened was this morning, because I was so nervous and I wanted to make sure it was still happening, everything was right, I rung the hospital and asked if my appointment was still on for 10 a.m. and they said, no, you were meant to be here a week ago. So I got the day right, but I got the date wrong. And that sort of spiraled me, because I'm like, hang on, what else are we missing at the moment? What details have we forgotten? And, that was a bit of a worry and a bit of a scare. And then the fact that I haven't slept, it's just a recipe for disaster. And there was no chance I was going to be able to put the brakes on this storm. So what I've just had to do is bunker down. I've got to ride it out. Like I said, I think at the start, this isn't something to be, scared of or worried in a more broader sense. Like, yes, the negative emotion's killing me, as I'll explain in detail shortly, but there's no potential for this to get out of hand, So we just got to white knuckle it, hold on, ride it out, and just hope we wake up tomorrow feeling a bit better. So obviously a big part of this is I need to get some good sleep tonight. What I'm a bit concerned about is that I'm going into early starts this week, so starting tomorrow, 5 a.m. shifts. So I really need to get some sleep soon and hope that tomorrow we wake up feeling a little bit better, because 5 a.m. starts are pretty brutal at the best of times. But let me tell you, when you're in a depressive episode or any of these mental illnesses are playing up, being up so early just fuels the fire. And so, that's the bit I'm a little bit concerned about, is that how this week might go. But as for this episode, this storm in particular right now, there's nothing to be worried about. It's within, comfortable parameters. It's just hard. So it's hard because it hurts. So it feels like someone's kicking me in the guts, I've been bent over, often today, sort of trying to breathe in the big ones and, just trying to, just sort of center myself. And it's hard. It is like waves that washes over, and so the best way I can describe it is, now I'm going to probably get this wrong, because typical male don't know these sorts of things, where maybe I should as a 33-year-old, but correct me if I'm wrong, with pregnancy, people get the contractions, right? And I think this is what happens. You have the first one, there's a big gap to the second one, then there's a slightly less gap to the third one. And as you go along, the gap between the contractions gets less and less. Is that right, ladies? Am I sort of on the mark? That is what the waves have been like today for me. So this morning, there was a pretty big one, big sort of, there was the realization that I'd sort of been so disorganized and screwed everything up. So that was, boom, there's a big wave of negativity right there, which isn't fun. But then all day it's just come flooding in. And I'm telling you right now, as I'm trying to do this episode, which I've been trying to do all day, I reckon every 30 seconds, and here's another one now, I reckon every 30 seconds these waves are coming in. I'm telling you, it's waves. It feels like, it's washing over me. And it's not good, But like I said, part of it feels like being kicked in the guts, and other part is, really tight in the chest. That's probably a bit of an anxious response. That's also, I'm not speaking in a linear way, but I hope this makes sense. See, as we probably are aware now, if you've listened to a few of my episodes, anxiety is a huge part of me, unfortunately. It is a huge part. It is there with me every day. Every day, anxiety manifests itself, and I've got to battle it and try and push it back into the corner so I can proceed with my day. That is every single day. And I'm not saying that for effect, added effect. It's the truth every day. Now, the depression sort of component isn't an everyday thing. That's why today's different, because there is this depressive component that's fueled mostly. Yeah, the appointment thing was a bit annoying. It's the lack of sleep though that's really causing it. I think, 2 hours sleep, whatever it was, is a recipe for disaster for anybody. And all I needed. So I have a feeling, and I really got to sort of hammer in on this, that I have cycles, and it makes sense. Bipolar disorder is one of my conditions, and borderline personality and ADHD, autism. There's a lot of emotional dysregulation, this sort of negative cycle, and it's, I guess, some weeks we're in a better cycle than others, and others we're not. Now the thing is, if I'm spiraling into the cycle where things aren't as good, if I'm doing all the right things and the fundamentals are all in place, like diet, sleep, I'm enjoying work, and financially I'm sort of secure, we can ride out the more negative cycle and sort of negate it completely. The problem is though, you get the perfect storm where I cycle into this, say, a negative week, which I've probably cycled into now. I've got a funny feeling, but then add on top of that the lack of sleep. That is the recipe for disaster right there. And that's what happened. And the missing the appointment thing, getting that wrong, was sort of like the match that started it all off. And then there was plenty of fuel, and there's still plenty of fuel now. So I'll go back to the contractions metaphor, which I'm probably getting completely wrong, but that's what it's been like. So these waves have gotten, closer and closer and closer together. And now it's happening like every 30 seconds. And I'm talking to you now, and I'm sort of going through it at the moment. So I'll go back to the symptoms of what it feels like. So it feels like someone's kicking in the guts, and I have grabbed my stomach a few times today and sort of been bent over and trying, on my haunches, and trying to, sort of get a bit of balance back. Everything slows down. So cognitively, I'm very slow. I hope I'm not slurring my words too much in this recording, but I definitely can pick up on the fact that I am slower in my speech, and my memory is terrible, which I think I've already said. I think I've already said that my short-term memory's not very good. So everything's slowed. My movements have slowed as well. So I'm sort of shuffling around a bit, and my shoulders are rounded, and I'm just slow, slower than normal, and it's hard. And I also get this weird feeling in my head. So I get sort of two feelings. If the trigger is something like from my past, like that I'm ruminating on, say like a past breakup, or when somebody maybe betrayed my trust and I didn't see that coming, and that makes me question if you can trust people at all. We've all sort of been through something similar to that, and unfortunately I have too. And I just go back to those instances, and those really burn my brain. Like, it feels like my brain is on fire. I'm telling you, it feels like my brain is on fire. And my chest is super tight and contracted. My lungs feel like they're burning. Feels like I'm being kicked in the guts. And we sort of just bunker down and really go within. But if it's sort of this depressive episode being fueled not by any specific sort of memories or triggers like that, what I feel in my head is just is great pressure, like it's really full. Like my prefrontal cortex, the front of the brain, where personality and executive functioning, all these cognitive functioning, is why I'm slowing down. I think it's all related. When there's no specific trigger, it just feels like there's so much pressure in my forehead. It's just heavy, this heavy weight. And I feel it in the pit of my stomach as well. I'm not going to go through it in this episode because I do not have the capacity to explain this, but you can feel different emotions in different parts of the body. And if you're with a really good psychologist, they can bring this out with you. So for me, for example, regret, like about past relationships, regret, that sits in the pit of my stomach. So if this episode, say, was to do with something like that in the past, a lot of my physical stuff will be centered around, the pit of my stomach. Whereas if it's something, it's not regretful, it's something I'm angry about, then it's like my brain's on fire, it's like, And if it's just this general melancholic sort of feeling, that's when I get, I guess, this heavy feeling in my forehead. So it's weird, the different shades of these sorts of negative episodes, they feel different, but at the same time, they're all the same because they feel terrible and it just makes you sad and it hurts a lot. So today's this is more of a fundamental issue that I got wrong, which was the sleep problem. So, of all the episodes that have the types, different types, say, if I was to categorize them, this one is one of the better ones because it's like, I should have slept more. It's easy fix, have an early night and we'll be right. So these particular episodes don't scare me. It's just we've got to hold on and wait for it and ride it out. And it's just hard because it hurts. Mentally, physically, emotionally, there's pain. There's a lot of pain. So even though this is one of the better ones, we're still experiencing that full array of negative emotion. And like I said, it's like waves washing over. It feels like waves are washing over me, but they're not the good type, like the beautiful beaches here in Newcastle. This is not the good type at all. This is not fun. And as I was talking to you, I think I said this before, but I'll say it again because it's sort of important. Every 30 seconds roughly, I'm having a wave wash over and I'm getting this real heavy feeling in my forehead. And I feel like when it washes over, it's when I stumble on words a bit more as well, which makes sense because, I'm floating in this ocean of negative emotion. That sounded pretty good, isn't it? An ocean of negative emotion. But I'm not anchored to anything, so I'm just floating around. And that is true, not just metaphorically, it's true in the real world too, because I am disassociating. So I'm not concentrating on the moment really. My attention is floating around because, the negative emotion's causing us to sort of skip around and try and, nullify it any way we can. So we're sort of running away from the feeling, but we're in the ocean of negative emotion. So it's, it's hard. So we're disassociating, we're floating around and but we just got to ride it out. So it is the perfect storm. Anxiety and depression are working together to make things really, really difficult for me. See, just right then, I just got a really, really big wave just then, right then. I don't know what I've said in this episode. So, I was going to ask a question. Obviously, you guys can't really answer. But I don't know if I mentioned, I probably did, that this whole episode kicked off at 8 o'clock this morning when I woke up. And I've been trying to get this episode out since 8 o'clock this morning. It's now 6:30. So there's definitely some autism and some ADHD hyperfocus here at play, definitely. But I just got a massive wave then, and which is what has been happening. I've been getting these waves of negative emotion while I've been doing these podcast episodes, and I've been pressing stop and then deleting them. And this has been going on all day, and I'm really pushing hard now to, keep this going, because my inner critic has been like, look, you're stumbling on words, you're repeating yourself. Everyone's going to think you're crazy and insane, when I'm not. I'm actually very aware of what's going on. I'm not any of those things at all. But that's what my inner critic's telling me, that this is dangerous stuff and it's dangerous territory and everyone's going to judge you and all this stuff. So it's very difficult. And I get these massive waves, and then what I have been doing all day is pressing pause and then deleting. Like, I'm looking at my phone now. I'm doing it on my phone because I can't do it in my microphone. I'm outside in my car. I don't know if I mentioned that. It's raining. It's quite fitting, really. But I've just seen that I've been talking for 19 minutes, and I really hope I've covered everything in that time. But yeah, it hurts. This is what mental illness is like sometimes, You have your good days and you have some really bad days, and this is a really tough one. But thankfully, we know where this is coming from, and I know the mistakes that have been made, and we can rectify that. So it's not too bad. It's all right. We'll get back on the horse. So anyway, that's enough for me. I'm going to go back inside and get some dinner. I can't believe this might actually be published. So, I don't know. You're getting first-hand experience of what I sometimes have to go through. And I'm going to keep talking just a little bit more, maybe 1 or 2 minutes more. like I am stumbling over words and being slower cognitively because I'm sleep deprived too. So not all of this is because of depression. A lot of this is because I just haven't slept enough, and this is what happens with everybody, you don't sleep enough. You've had 2 hours sleep, you have a terrible day. It's very hard to concentrate. That's not mental illness. That is, you need to get some sleep. And so that's a big part of what's happening here today as well. There's a big component of this that isn't mental illness. It's Elliot needs to sleep more because that's a fundamental of being healthy in general. So I just want to make that point clear. This recording may come off very clunky. I have a feeling. I am probably repeating things over and over again. Hopefully at least I've got the detail out that I wanted to try and, let you in on some insight on what it feels like. But this is definitely an episode that's been driven by anxiety as always, because it's always there. But also these depressing thoughts that don't really have a specific trigger. It's just this general wave that just floods over and over and over. And like I said, it gets very physical, my stomach, kicked in the stomach, it hurts. Now my brain has got all this tension, this heavy feeling and different emotions I'm feeling in different parts of my body. But like I said, I know I've definitely said this probably at least twice. There's no reason to be concerned because I know how to fix it. Get some sleep, get some early sleep tonight. And we know what caused it. So it's fine. We just got to do the right thing, which is, be healthy and do what everyone tries to do. Try and get 8 hours and then tomorrow will be better. So there's no reason to be concerned. Just got to ride it out. This is what happens. This is mental illness, I didn't choose to wake up today and be in this painful mood, but this is what happens. And this is why, I need to go to hospital and see what these 9 medications are doing, because I don't know, should I be having days like this anymore if I'm on 9 medications? I don't know. Maybe not. Am I slurring words and a bit slow mentally because of some of these medications and their side effects? Don't know. Maybe we need to sort of investigate that as well. And then, they're parts of my history that I haven't attended to properly, which I definitely know there is. Why haven't we done that? We need to be doing that. Another reason why I need to get into hospital and talk to the clinical psychologists there as well. So, I'm not, as I said, I'm not concerned about anything because, assuming everything goes to plan, I will be going onto the ward soon, and then we can work out all this sort of stuff, and then hopefully these sorts of episodes won't happen anymore. But this used to be an everyday thing. It's not an everyday thing anymore. This is once in a blue moon now, which is great, And back in the day, there used to be specific triggers, and it would just fire me up, and it would just dig me from the inside out, and it just would dig in, and just rip me apart. Whereas that's not what today is. Today's definitely a down, flat, sort of melancholic mood, but it doesn't have that intensity. But at the same time, I don't want to trivialize it because as I've said, as I'm talking, I'm feeling this kick in the guts and the chest getting tight and this inner critic that's just in my ear, just giving me hell. I don't want to trivialize this at all. This hurts and it's not fun, but yeah, it's not one of the real bad ones, let me tell you. Because that's what we're done. We're going to the emergency department. That's what preceded going to the ED, were these episodes that had specific triggers, and it wasn't just depression and anxiety. BPD was always involved, is always involved. When I go to the ED, bipolar's doing its thing. I've swung into a negative mood state for an extended period. All this stuff. Autism's flared up. Today's more of a simple. It's a very simple sort of 2-dimensional sort of phenomena, and it is because I didn't get the fundamentals right. I didn't have enough sleep. So it's a very simple one to fix. Get some sleep, have an early night tonight. Try not to dwell too much, try and keep myself busy, but go to bed early. And tomorrow it should be much better, because it's not that we're going into some emotional spiral. It's just that we need some sleep. So anyway, I think I've been repeating myself over and over again, but I'll tell you this right now. There is no podcast on the internet that goes as deep and is as genuine, honest and fair income as this one. Like seriously, doing this episode, I'm telling you, it is brutal. It is killing me. It is brutal, but it is so important that I do it, because if I want to have a podcast that is insightful and has some real value and utility in this, by offering my experiences and insights to, maybe you can resonate with my story or whatever. But, the real goal of this podcast, besides being my journal, is to really pull back the curtains on mental illness and be like, look, this is what it is, We haven't spoken about much over the years, but this is what it's like. This is what people go through. Real people go through this every day. So that's why I'm motivated. Although this episode, like I said, is brutal, has been brutal, and it's probably been brutal for you to listen to as well, and I apologise. As another wave goes over and I'm getting a bit short of breath, I need to be doing these episodes in these moments, because these are the moments which is where mental illness takes centre stage. And this is what I need to convey to people so they can understand if they're going through something similar. It's not all rainbows. I don't want to be doing a mental health podcast where, I go into deep stuff, don't get me wrong, but, usually I'm trying to do it in a bit of a jovial mood. But today, this is fair income. This is real life. And I don't think there's anywhere on the internet that'll give you any more than this, like seriously. So anyway, I'm going to stop now because I just keep talking and talking. So thank you everybody for listening. I'll see you next time here on the Dysregulated podcast.